Hello world. We are back discussing Mark Manson's book, Everything is Effed, a book about hope. And you are here joining me in my basement. And as I said, I wanted to kind of give you a picture of something on my hope wall before we started every week. And this week it's appropriate that we take a look at this here. Oh yeah, at last, the Philadelphia Eagles win the Super Bowl, beating the New England Patriots, whom they faced a few years prior, and were unable to get the job done. But this year, in particular, they do it. And they do it in stellar fashion, in such a way that just totally rocks Philadelphia. Now, that's interesting because when we talk about hope, really what Mark Manson wants to talk about is self-control in this chapter. So the illusion, actually, of self-control. And when I say I hope that the Eagles win the Super Bowl, I have no control over that whatsoever. I mean, I can pray. I could go to a game and cheer as loud as possible and boo the opponent. But outside of that, I really do not have any control of them winning the Super Bowl. So that's not the kind of hope that Mark Manson is talking about. He's really talking about the kind of hope that gives me energy for life, that it sustains me. It's the hope that keeps me from anxiety, which is a failed future. It keeps me from depression, which is a meaningless future. I love that Mark describes it in that way. And it's just this energy that I need to sustain myself, the reason to get out of bed and to move, just move, action. So we're talking about that kind of hope. So what are the things that I hope for that really give me energy to keep moving in life and keep pursuing goals, keep pursuing my purpose? Just to recap, I don't know if I covered this in the last chapter, but in the prior chapter, he defines hope as a belief that there is potential for growth or improvement or salvation in the future. And there are ways we can navigate to get there. So you take away the belief, you take away the idea of growth, improvement, salvation in the future, you take away the paths, and you don't have hope. So this is the hope, is the belief in the potential for growth, improvement, or salvation in the future, and that there are ways that we can navigate to get there. So talking about self-control, basically he just shocks you with saying self-control is a myth. It's an illusion. And so, okay, then how do I get hope if I don't have control? And so he's basically saying what we need is to get control. And how do we get it? The way he goes about this is to talk about that control within yourself is a fight between two brains, your thinking brain and your feeling brain. And there's a huge problem because these two do not agree. Most of the time, they're in conflict. So this is stems from kind of this classic assumption, is what he calls it, this classic assumption that, and I'll read it for you, that we must use our rational mind, our thinking brain, to dominate our feeling brain. And if a person is undisciplined, unruly, or malicious, it's because they lack the ability to subjugate their feelings. And that that person is a weak-willed person or just plain effed up. It sees passion and emotion as flaws, errors within the human psyche that must be overcome and fixed within the self. So this classic assumption is really what's messed us up, because if we just need to think that the thinking brain is the one that should be in charge. And the thinking brain knows what to do. It's just the feeling brain just keeps on messing it up. So for the last few hundred years, thousands of years, people have been trying to control the feeling brain, the brain that just has impulses and wants to do things that are not good for it, like eat too much, drink too much, party too much, whatever it might be. So if we could just get the thinking brain in charge. And Mark's saying, no, that's not the way we should go about it all. Your feeling brain is not bad. Embrace your feeling brain. The key to getting control is alignment, where you get your thinking brain and your feeling brain on the same page, that they want the same thing, that they value the same thing. Chapter 3, he's going to go into values. I haven't read it yet, so I don't really know how to unpack it yet, but just to get those two in agreement is the key. So he says that there's a crisis of hope, because with the feeling brain, there's either overindulgence of repression, or there's overindulgence or repression of emotion. So either I become indulgent, so it's never enough, I keep wanting more and more and diving into selfishness and getting what I want, or I become indifferent, I become numb. And both lead back to what he calls in chapter 1, the uncomfortable truth. And this is important that I didn't hit in the last video, but the uncomfortable truth is this, that he writes on every Starbucks coffee cup, just to get it into our brains. And this is the uncomfortable truth that we will come to if we do not have hope. The uncomfortable truth is that one day you and everyone you love will die. And beyond a small group of people for an extremely brief period of time, little of what you do and say will ever matter. We imagine our own importance. We invent our own purpose. We are nothing. So it's all a sham. And Mark is not new in thinking in this nihilistic way that everything is meaningless. Song of Solomon, or not Song of Solomon, but Ecclesiastes, he goes into this. Everything is meaningless. If you boil it all down, the sun is going to supernova. It's going to burn up our little blue planet, and we're all going to die. So whatever we do now really doesn't matter. I love he's honest. I love that he's willing to say this is the uncomfortable truth. The bottom line, that if we don't have hope, we just go back to this uncomfortable truth, that I'm insignificant and I don't matter. But that's not what we're supposed to believe. We're supposed to believe that we do matter, that what we say is important, our purpose affects other people. And that's hope speaking, he says. So without hope, and the crisis of hope again, is that we are indulging our emotions or repressing them. And so we need, the crisis of hope is that we have an uneducated feeling brain. Not that we have an uneducated thinking brain, because we know what we should do probably. More often than not, we know what we should do, what the healthy thing is to do. The problem is we don't want to do it, just because our feelings are like, nah, screw that. I'm not going to go work out. I'm going to go have a beer. So if we can get the feeling brain educated and aligned with the thinking brain, that's when we're going to have control. So the goal is to get our values straight within ourselves so that we can get our values straight within the world. I'm impressed with Mark because as a guy who's thought years about hope, myself, it's taken me years to come up with what is hope really about. And I feel like Mark has done it without, maybe like a year or two thought. So I'm impressed with some of his thinking. But I'm more impressed with Jesus and his thinking. And the goal for Mark is alignment within yourself. Jesus' thinking is, how can I align myself with my Father? How can my values match his values? And he reveals this when he says, I only do what I see the Father doing. That's where I get my value from. When he's about to go to the cross, he's praying in the garden and he doesn't want to die. So he's saying his feelings are, look, this is not a way to die. I know what's coming and I don't want it. This is torture. I don't want to be tortured. But then he prays, not what I will, but what you will. Basically, not what I want, Father, but what you want. Because I know that what you want is more important. And when Jesus aligns with the Father, he basically gives the Father control and says, I believe that you, all powerful of the world, of the universe, that if you are in control, then things are going to go out much better and be much more meaningful than if I take control myself. And that's where I find my peace and my hope comes from, is that when I align myself with what God wants, as opposed to trying to align my thinking brain and my feeling brain. because it's a jumble. It's a mess. I mean, like, I don't know very many people who have that alignment. And the educating the feeling brain, I totally agree that we should do that because our values are effed up. And we do want dumb things. So we need to educate our feeling brain. But how do I educate it? Where do I get that education? That's where I think aligning with values outside of myself. And he's going to dive into that. I can't wait for chapter 3 on values. Just some food for thought on this one. And I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me. And have a great day.